Well guys, today I will show you how to make your exercise. We're going to start with the exercise number 4, okay? So we're going to enter two values and make 4 functions. So sum, subtract, multiply, division, and we're going to print the results of each one. Okay? Because of this exercise, it's not asking to us what type of division we're going to make. We're going to leave it on float division. Okay, so let's go here and we are going to paste. We're going to start with a hashtag and we're going to paste information. We're going to need to start with the functions before we start making the variables that are going to be sending the values to the functions. So let's start with the first function, with the sum function. Over here, I start by making the function, then assigning the values a and b as parameters, then and make the action here by creating a variable called result that is going to store the math operation of the sum. Then I'm going to return that result. Now I'm going to go to the subtraction. So let's start with def to tell that we're going to make a function. Then I'm going to make, sorry, I have the wrong exercise here. I'm going to paste it. Okay, let's add here. Okay, now I have it all information that I need here, and I'm going to start by writing the name of our second function that is going to be subtraction. Okay, now I'm going to send the two parameters that I'm going to need. I add the column, and here I'm going to make my math operation, and I'm going to return the result that I'm storing on my variable result. Okay, now we are going to move on to the next function, the multiply. Here, if you see I write multiply, then inside the parentheses I start adding the arguments that I'm going to need. These parameters, I'm going to be calling them inside the function. Okay, here I'm multiplying a times b, and then I'm going to return the result that is going to be stored on the variable result. Now I'm going to make my division function. Okay, I start sending my arguments that I need for my function. Okay, now I'm going to make a comparison that is going to deny. Okay, if it's different from 0, I want to remove. I want to make a different action. Okay, if it's different of 0, I want to make my division. If a is different from 0, I'm going to make my operation by a divided by b. Then I'm going to return the result. Okay, I'm going to return the result, and my final step on this function is to return 0. Okay, so now I'm going to return 0. And now I can start by making my variables. Okay, I will need 2 variables. So I start writing num1 is going to be equal to int Then I'm going to write input. Inside, I'm going to write the message, enter an integer value, then I'm going to write my second variable, and I'm going to write the message. Now that I have my two variables, now I can call my function, but I need a variable to store that information. So up there, I'm going to call my sum function, and I'm going to send my two arguments. Now I'm going to call my subtraction function, and I'm going to store it on subresult. And now I'm going to make my multiply storage, and here I'm going to call my multiply function, and I'm going to send the two values, the two parameters that I request the function. Now I'm going to make my final variable to store the division. Here I'm going to send the two arguments that are asked for me. Okay. And the final step that I will need to make is to print all the values that I have stored. Okay. So I'm going to start with the sum result. Okay. Then followed by the subtraction result. Okay. Now followed by the multiply store result. Okay. And the division. Okay. The division. Okay. Now that I have my print and my storage, okay, I can run my exercise. Okay, but here if you see we have some spaces here, this is going to throw out to us an error, so we're going to remove this space that we have here. Okay, we're going to delete all these spaces. Okay, we're going to continue removing until we don't have spaces. Okay, now that we don't have spaces, we can be able to run it. Okay, it's going to ask for the first value. Okay, then it's going to ask for the second one, and here we can see the result. Okay, over here we can see that is working. Now we're going to the next exercise. Okay, that is going to be enter two integer values and make two functions. They will do an integer division and a float division. Then we're going to print the results. So let me add my exercise information here, okay, like a guideline. now we can start. Okay, we have here one division. Okay, but we are going to do this from the scratch. Okay, from 0. So let me delete all of this. Okay, so we can start. Good. The first step that we're going to need to do is to make our functions. Okay, there are two division functions that we're going to make. One is going to be the division float. Okay, we are going to send two arguments here, and here we are going to first make a comparison. Okay, we need to know if a is different from 0. Okay, if the variable a is different from 0, we can make the division. So here we start by making the division if that is true. Now I'm going to return that result that I'm storing on the variable result. The final step that I'm going to do on this function is to return 0. Okay, now we're going to start by making our division integer. Okay, so here I'm going to send the two arguments that I need to make my function work. Here I'm going to start making the comparison that if a is different from 0, we are going to make the division. Okay, so we are going to start by writing our variable result. Okay, and here I'm going to make the division. Because this one is an integer division, we need to add the double sign. Now I'm going to return my variable result because it's the one that have the value stored. The final step is to return 0. Now that we have the two functions, we can start by making our variables. So let's start by num1. Here I'm going to send an input. Okay, because the input is a string, we need to convert that input to an int. So I wrap the input inside an int so we can have an integer value. Now that I have my two variables, I'm going to start making my result division float. Okay, that is going to store the value that is going to return to me the division float function. Okay, so I'm going to send my two arguments here, and now I'm going to make the variable result div int. This one is going to store the value that is going to return to us the division int function. Okay, and we send the two arguments that the function needs, and now that we have it, we can print the result of both variables. So I start here. Now that I have my print, I already store. Okay, I can run my exercise. So I'm going to enter the two values. Okay, my second value. And there we have it. Now we see that it's working. And that's their exercise 6. Now let's move on to the next exercise. On this one, it's telling to us to enter 6 grades and make a function that will return the average. Then we're going to print the average, so we need to make an average function. Okay, so let's delete first and let's start. We're going to make our average function and we need to send, okay, all the parameters that we need. In this case are 6 grades that we need to send. So let's start by writing grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, grade 4, and grade 5. And the last one will be grade 6. Okay, now we can add here column and we can start of making the actions inside our average function. So here I'm going to declare a variable AV that is going to first store the sum. Okay, I need first to make the sum here. So I'm going to sum grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, grade 4, grade 5, and grade 6. Now I'm going to divide this by 6. Over here, I'm going to add double division sign. Okay. Now I'm going to return the value that we have stored on the variable AV. Now that we have our function, let's start by making the variables that are going to have the input. So here I'm going to start making the first int variable. Okay, I'm going to add here an input because we are going to enter the value, and here I'm going to say enter grade 1. Then we're going to make the second variable, and we're going to make the same procedure. Enter grade 2. And we are going to continue with the next one. Enter grade 3. Here we are going to enter grade 4. Now we're going to make the variable 5, okay, G5, and here we're going to make the input, and we are going to enter grade 5. Now I'm going to make my final variable that is going to be G6, and I'm going to say enter grade 6. Now that I have my 6 variables, I can make the variable that is going to store the result of my average function. Okay, so I'm going to call here average result, and I'm going to call the average function. Now I'm going to start sending all the values that I needed. In this case, I already sent my 6 parameters, and now my final step is to print average result. Now I'm going to run it, and it's going to start asking for me for the values. The grade 1, the grade 2, the grade 3, the grade 4, the grade 5, and the grade 6. Now that is the average, and it's good. Okay, let's try to copy the exercise. Okay, the guide of the exercise. Okay, now that I copied them, it's telling to us to make these variables with random numbers. Then we're going to print the values. First, I need to import random. Okay, now that I import random, I can start making the variables that I'm going to need. I need 6 variables. So let's start. I'm going to name it N1, okay, the first variable. And here I'm going to call random ran_int. So I'm going to generate random numbers from 1 to 100. And we're going to continue with the variable number 2 and 2. And we're going to do the same. We are going to call random ran_int. And we're going to make the same with the variable number 3. We're going to say random ran_int, and we're going to say that it's going to be into 1 to 100. The variable N4, random ran_int 1 100. Okay. The variable random ran_int, okay, 1 to 100. And the variable 6 N6, and this one is going to be equal to random ran_int 1 to 100. Okay. If you see, it's the same procedure. Now the next step is to print. Now that we have our values, we are going to print each variable. So we're going to start with N1, then we are going to continue with N2, we are going to continue with N3, N4, N5, N6, and now that we have it all, we are going to run it. And there we have it, all our random values. And that's the exercise. Now let's move to the next one. We are going to make 6 variables, and we are going to enter the value. We are going to use the if statement to compare which variable has the greatest value and print the greatest value. So we're going to copy this one and we are going to go over here. We are going to add our guideline. Okay, let me fix here this one so we can have there. Now that we have our guideline, I can start making here. I'm going to delete the information that I have here. Okay, so we can start from 0. And if you see here, I don't need to make functions. I only need to start making the variable. So I'm going to delete all the information that we have here, and I'm going to start here. And input, enter a value. Okay, that's one. And 2 is going to be int, input, enter a value. Okay, and 3, the same, is going to be int, input, enter a value. And 4, int, input, enter value. Okay, and 5, int, input, enter value. And 6, int, input, enter value. Okay, there we have our 6 variables. Now we need to start making our comparison. Okay, so we start with an if statement, and here I'm going to say n1 is going to be greater than n2, and n1 is going to be greater than n3, and n1 is going to be greater than n4, and n1 is going to be greater than n5, and n1 is going to be greater than n6. Now here I add the column, and here I'm going to add the action that is going to happen if this comparison comes through. So I'm going to say here the max number is, and here I'm going to convert, okay, my integer variable to a string, okay, and 1. Now I'm going to add an else if, okay. On this one, we are going to copy and okay the same structure that we have on our if, okay, and here we are going to start changing some arguments. Okay, here I'm going to say that n2 is going to be greater than n1, and n2 is going to be greater than n3, and 4 is going to be greater than n2 is going to be greater than n4, and 2 is going to be greater than n5, and n2 is going to be greater than n6. And the final step is to copy the action that is going to make. The action is going to be to the max number, to print the max number is, and here I'm going to send the variable n2. Now we copy the else if and we start changing, okay. n3 is going to be greater than n1, n3 is going to be greater than n2, N3 is going to be greater than N4, N3 is going to be greater than N5, and N3 is going to be greater than N6. And the max number is going to be N3. Now here, I'm going to paste again the else if, and here we are going to start changing the arguments. N4 is going to be greater than N1, N4 is going to be greater than N3, N4 is going to be greater than N2, and N4 is going to be greater than N5, and N4 is going to be greater than N6. If all of this is true, it's going to print the next number is going to be N4. Now, the next one. We are going to say N5 is going to be greater than N1, N5 is going to be greater than N3, N5 is going to be greater than N4, N5 is going to be greater than N2, and N5 is going to be greater than N6. If all of this comparisons comes true, the max number is going to be N6. Sorry, N5. Now, the next one. We copy and paste it. Now, here we are going to compare if N6 is greater than N1, and N6 is greater than N3, and N6 is greater than N4, and N6 is greater than N5, and the last one, if N6 is greater than N2, the max number is going to be N6. That means if this comparison becomes true, the max is going to print the max number is N6. Now the final step, the final action that we need to add is an else, okay? If all of these are equal, on the else we are going to print all the numbers are equal. Okay, now that we have it, we start running and we start entering the values, okay? And there we have, that is the max number. Well, that's the last exercise. I hope you enjoy it.